Now, the Trump administration has recently announced that it is ending a long-standing requirement that certain nonprofit organizations disclose the names of their donors. Now, the rules, of course, say that they have to disclose those donors to the IRS for reporting purposes. Now, the New York Times reported on this change, which has long been sought by conservatives and Republicans in Congress. Now, they say it will affect thousands of labor unions, social clubs, and political groups as varied as arms of the AARP, the United States Chamber of Commerce, the NRA, that's National Rifle Association, and Americans for Prosperity. Those are just some of the groups that are affected, but I think pretty much every lobbying group that is a 501c4, that is one of these social welfare groups, is going to be impacted by this in a positive, for them, way. Now, of course, they mention Americans for Prosperity, of course, because they're funded by Charles and David Koch. Now, I love how they mention the labor unions, right? And this is more of a critique of the article itself. They mention it as if they're on the same level as the Koch brothers. Now, anybody who's looked at lobbying disclosures knows that these Koch-funded groups actually spend tons more, millions more, than labor unions. Why? It's because labor unions are incredibly weak, while corporations and their spending is incredibly strong. But anyway, now, so the point is, overall, this is going to help the NRA, it's going to help the Koch brothers. Why? It's because, well, it's actually going to help them because they want to keep their donations secret. And the reason that they want to keep their donations secret is because likely they don't want to be known, the donors don't, for funding hideous conservative politicians and policies, but they still want their tax cuts. And they're, of course, admitting that that's what they want. Treasury officials said reporting the change, which affects contributions known as dark money, because their source is hidden, would protect privacy and reduce compliance costs for nonprofit organizations. So they don't want to be known. They do not want to be named in these disclosures. Now, does anybody here think that Americans for Prosperity is so concerned about compliance costs that that was the reason that they were demanding that the IRS put a stop to transparency? Does anybody here believe that? I don't. It's because the donors want to remain hidden. Because you don't know who these donors are. I mean, could you think of any reasons why people would like their donations to certain politicians to remain hidden, or to certain political action groups to remain hidden? Maybe you're the head of a CEO that claims to be progressive, or claims to be good on the environment. And, oh, look, you're caught giving money to Republican PACs. That, of course, these PACs fund politicians that don't believe in climate change. Well, you don't want to be associated with that, but you still end up wanting tax cuts and maybe deregulation that helps your business. That might be a reason. Can you think of anybody who's just been in the news for that? But it's not just them. It's also foreign actors, right? Now, let me give you an example here. So this is back in the primary, the Republican primary, there's a Chinese couple. They're not American citizens, but they do own some companies in America. Now, this Chinese power couple lives in Singapore. They're Chinese citizens. They actually gave money to Jeb Bush's super PAC. I know, right? Jeb Bush.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.
They gave money to him.
Please clap.
Yeah, that guy. Now, look, that's the thing. If you have unaccountable money, if you have dark money, we don't know if the money is coming from Chinese nationals. You don't know if they're coming from Russian nationals. Or if you're really, really afraid and you're from the right wing, Venezuelan nationals. You don't know. That's the problem with dark money. Now, that said, critics denouncing the measure said it would encourage political donations from both domestic contributors who want to skirt the law or keep their influence secret, as I mentioned. Now, Marcus Owens, a Washington lawyer and former director of the IRS Division for Tax-Exempt Organizations, said, quote, "It's a clear signal that the IRS and now the Treasury Department are not interested in any significant oversight of nonprofits. What they're doing is excusing them from filing information that is of material importance for determining whether the organizations are operating appropriately and within the boundaries of the rules. Now, as far as I know, there are Republicans, many Republicans out there, that don't want any rules on donations. No. What we want is we want to be able to give as much money to whoever we want and have nobody find out. Because I don't want people knowing that I bought their politician. Why? Because that looks bad on me. Why does that look bad on you? Maybe it's because the American people really hate it when you buy off their politicians and you destroy democracy. Just saying. Now, Lloyd Hitachi Mayer, a law professor at Notre Dame Law School, said it would also further diminish reporting requirements for these groups, and, quote, this would make so-called dark money a bit darker. Well, that's just what Americans need. Darker money. We already got dark money. We needed even darker money. That is, again, thanks to Citizens United, unlimited dark money. I mean, look, it's insanity that here we have something called dark money in the first place. We shouldn't have that. We shouldn't have money in politics at all. But again, they're doing this because they don't want you to know that they're buying they're buying your politicians. Now, in fact, let me get a load of this quote here. This is the head lobbyist for Koch Industries. This is what they're thinking, right? Transparency is meant for the government, not for private individuals. Especially, I'm guessing, in your opinion, if those individuals are lobbyists on behalf of giant multinational corporations. Look, it's not about the average person giving $5 or $20 to a local politician. No, the problem here is wealthy people giving the maximum allowed and then giving even more unlimited dark money to a super PAC. Now, the problem with that is, of course, they use that to run ads. Now, not only does that have a huge impact on political races, especially local political races, where there's a lot of outside dark money going to these local candidates, but also the media. You ever wonder why the media is so messed up? You ever wonder why the media doesn't hold politicians accountable? It's because of the money. Look, the media is a recipient of a lot of this dark money. So, for example, these super PACs, they will go and they will spend money on TV ads that they get from a lot of these giant corporate donors, right? They'll get that money from the giant donors. They'll go and buy television ads. The television station makes money. And there's a possibility that those ads drown out the competition who might not have that money advantage. And then what you have is a corporate bought politician. That's the big problem here, right? Now, it's not the only people. We've got television, we've got the politicians. We also have consulting firms. So that's a big issue as well. Now, consultants themselves, they do play a role, right? But when you have consulting firms that charge millions and millions of dollars and they give terrible, shitty advice, and they win either way, right? They get paid either way. Well, that can be a problem too, and a lot of this dark money ends up going to pay some of these shady consultant groups. So that's a big problem. Now, let me go forward here. Now, to show you how badly that they want to hide their donors, Americans for Prosperity and other 501c4 organizations and the Koch network of advocacy groups were among dozens of such nonprofit groups to sign into a letter sent in May to Mr. Trump and Mr. Mnuchin declaring a policy change a, quote, an issue of utmost importance. It's an issue of utmost importance. It is so important here in America. Now, look, in America, we're facing unprecedented levels of corruption in the government, thanks to this dark money. We're also seeing, as a result of that, enormous levels of income and wealth inequality. We're seeing people that are dying without health care, with health insurance that is increasingly unaffordable, wages that are non-livable, and yet Americans for Prosperity calls this utmost importance. This policy. Now, of course, here's what they base that on. The letter had accused the IRS of targeting nonprofit organizations on the basis of their ideology. Now, this goes back to when these conservative groups were all outraged because there was the IRS that was looking into their spending, right? So they were incredibly angry. How dare you look at us? How dare you look into us? Why are you not doing it to the liberals? Well, what they didn't know, or at least what they won't tell you, is that both conservative and progressive groups were targeted. So liberal groups were also targeted. They don't say anything about that, though. No, they don't care. And besides, compared to the conservative groups, the liberal groups don't spend as much, not nearly as much as the conservative groups. So it was never a consideration. No, the reality is that they don't want any oversight into their political spending. They want to keep it completely anonymous, completely dark, and basically as unregulated as they can get. Now, Stephen Rosenthal, the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center, had said about this, that the change would effectively end that agency's oversight. Quote, the IRS audits tax-exempt organizations once in a blue moon, and only after many years, Mr. Rosenthal said, noting that the agency has been starved for resources and has had to cut back enforcement. Quote, it's an impossible challenge to follow the money trail at that point. It's impossible to follow that money trail because of how basically neutered and feckless the IRS actually is. Well, there you go. And of course, Republicans, upon hearing that they can't follow the money, cheered. Mitch McConnell on Tuesday called the decision particularly welcome news to those of us who intently focused on defending the First Amendment. For those of us who over the years have raised concerns during the last administration without activist regulators punishing free speech and free association, it's a straightforward, common sense policy decision. Well, that is if your common sense includes allowing politicians to be bought by big corporations and shady, so-called social welfare groups, which they are not pushing for social welfare. What they're doing, of course, is they're flooding money into the political system. Look, this is legal bribery. Okay? You don't think they know that? No, Mitch McConnell has been on the fight to get more money into politics for decades and decades. Even Citizens United, he waited outside the courthouse like a little schoolgirl, right? Waiting for the good news. Ooh, I can't wait. Ooh, I can't wait. Did they make money free speech? Is that what they did? Did they allow more money in politics? Oh, great. That means I can make more money in politics. Terrible decision. Terrible. Look, anybody in their right mind cannot stay with a straight face that money is speech or money should be equal to speech. And that money being equal to speech somehow does not even present the appearance of corruption. You can't say that and actually be and not laugh and not realize the absurdity of it. I guess maybe unless you're drowning in that money. And in that case, you love it. You love it. And that's, of course, indicative of Mitch McConnell. The only reason that he's still there is because he can outspend his opponents by a lot. Now, it's not just him, of course. It benefits nationals from other countries because we won't know if they're donating to politicians. So there goes that. Look, this is the swamp. This is the corruption. And the Trump administration just enabled even more corruption on top of what was already wrong. Now, look, I understand the argument that, hey, man, look, Trump is here to expose this corruption. Well, he's not just exposing it, he's making it worse. He's making it more brazen and he's normalizing that corruption. And that, of course, is not the direction that we want to go. We need to get the money out of politics. We need to end this corruption. We need to kick out the Trump administration and the Republicans and the corporate Democrats, the neoliberals, and we need to actually take the country back for the people. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.